Okay, so we need to get with some questions or something, I guess, eh? There's still 6 minutes to go before
Yes.
the...
So I have one question to Norman. I missed the first words when Norman entered, and you had good fun laughing at something about homeschooling. Anyway, if you, Norman, could repeat that and tell me what kind of questions you would like to ask Tom during the meeting. So maybe I would just ask you to join the stage at specific place where it's in context.
Perfect. Yeah, I was talking. I said I haven't done a lot to contribute, I think, to the free school effort yet, besides not forcing my daughter to go to school. Yeah, because I kind of found out about everything, including Tom, through your works, Peter. So I just kind of mentioned that, and I just kind of riffed on that. With the questions that I'd like to direct towards Tom, I think so. Tom, I feel like you have a huge resource of a huge wealth of knowledge and experience through a lot of educational changes, right? Because you've seen a lot of eras kind of go by and different thoughts on that. I grew up not in extremely draconian like rules, kind of a little bit. I went to a private school, but it was just like a basic school. But I think a lot of my questions will probably revolve around what we can do with changing times and how to kind of counteract different people's different beliefs towards either free education or homeschooling or things like that, and what you've seen. Because I was surprised through kind of doing some research in the past couple of years since my daughter's been born. Like, I mean, Summerhill and a lot of these schools have been out for, since before I was born. But and there was kind of trends that were going a certain way, but it seems like that's really like rubber banded back. So I'd like to hear, and I'll probably ask questions regarding that.
Yeah. I mean, Summerhill was what, 1924 or something like that is when Neil founded it, and it's still going. Have you ever seen that the film on Summerhill that was made? It's a dramatized version. It's not a exactly documentary, but it's very accurate, and it's totally inspiring as to the way the school works, and particularly the democratic aspects of it. As you may know, the school has a general meeting once a week, and sometimes more often, where every person there, no matter what age, whether they're staff or little kids, have one vote. So there's no adult privilege, as it were. The adults do not make the rules, the kids do. And it works extremely well. And one of my arguments about public school is that it is anti-democratic. It's, as I once said, an authoritarian dictatorship. And I don't see how it is intended to prepare young people to operate in a democratic society where they have, because in school they have no rights whatsoever.
I have a technical question to Xander. Xander, if the invitation links go to hand-raising chat, is it possible that people just go in early and see nobody's there and quit?
Yes, that is possible, but I assume they'll see this channel and join, so I wouldn't worry too much about it.
Yeah, assuming they are reasonably fluent. I remember my first wandering on Discord, and it was really confusing, especially when you work in the browser. Okay, guys.
Well, let's hope it's high enough value that they persist and find it.
So tell me, do we move? Because the general idea is this: we start in a formal way with a hand-raising chat, a couple of questions. Then we move to this free-flowing discussion. I think the question by Norman about history, that's done best interactively, because you may have micro questions, so we'll do it interactively.
Sure.
So we will have like 20, maybe 40 minutes on this formal part. And the thing is, what's the best way to start this formal part? Do I start the event and we move, or do we move and I start the event? How's that, Xander?
I'm not sure technically, but I would say if everybody's all right with it, let's just go ahead and move to the hand-raising chat. That way, no matter what happens, we're in the right spot.
Tom is second time on Discord. Tom, do you know how to get to hand-raising chat?
Hand-raising chat. Let me see.
Maybe we'll lead you. You're still in the browser, so maybe you see less. When you see hand raising chat on your screen, just click it and then we follow you.
Oh, whatever. Okay. I'm sure it'll all work. I see voice chat. Oh, hand raising chat. Okay, yes. So do I click that then?
Yep, go ahead and click that, and then we'll all join
Are you
over there.
sure? Are you sure? It looks like you're in another. Are you sure you want to switch to hand raising? My laptop, which is running down very quickly, I guess we decided not to use it. It has a camera. This computer does not have one.
Mm.
Well, it's now 1 minute after 1 over here. 1 minute after 9 where you guys are, when in Europe.
I'm in California, so it's 1 p.m. for me.
You're the same time zone as I am.
Yeah. Waz, I joined a bit late here, so do you want to do a quick introduction for what this is about and then start us off with a topic, or how do you want to approach it?
Yes, I'll do it. However, just for safety, I'm also recording. I think Palace is recording, and perhaps Straven is recording. And I fear that when I have a wrong setup, I'll record the meeting without recording my voice. So I think I need to check if I'm recording from the right sound channel. I think so. Okay. So 5 in the audience. Okay. Nobody is raising a hand. Okay, so I will start with a short introduction. Starting now. Ladies and gentlemen, everybody knows and loves Dr. Peter Gray. However, today I have something better. Dr. Peter Gray's grandfather.
Come on.
At least this is how I like to call him. Our guest today is Tom Durrie. Do I pronounce it correctly, Tom? Tom Durrie.
Yes.
Hello, Tom.
Hello. Can you hear?
Tom?
You can hear me.
Yes. Tom was born in
all right.
Tom was born in 1931. Let me spell it for you. That's 1931. Tom is older than the Empire State Building. And he is in much better shape. Tom's new book is School and the End of Intelligence: The Erosion of Civilized Society. Guys, welcome our grandfather, Tom Durrie. Audience is muted, but I see smiling faces. I see smiling faces, lots of clapping. If anybody has a question, please raise your hand.
Would you mind laying out the general topic and what you want to discuss, if there's a goal for the conversation, anything like that, so people know what to ask questions about, that kind of thing?
I think we'll focus on the school and the end of...
Who's going to do that?
I think we'll focus on school and the end of intelligence.
Okay.
So if nobody's asking a question, I have one. Tom revealed in his writing that the formula for his longevity is his curiosity. So he's been curious all his life. And even you can deduce from his saying that if you want to live long, don't send kids to school. Because at school, kids lose curiosity. So that's the main ingredients for that longevity. So my question will be about passion. Tom, you could have been spending your time with your grandchildren, but you decided to write a book. What made you write about school and intelligence?
Oh, well, this is something I've had in mind for a long time. I guess, well, I went to Prescott College in Arizona in around 1999, 2000, and I got a master's degree in counseling psychology, which I was interested in at the time. And my faculty advisor said, "Oh, you may want to write a book." And I thought, "Gosh, yeah, I should do that." Now that was what, only 20 some years ago. And so I had already started a book, actually. It was called 10 Arguments for the Elimination of School. And I wrote about half of it, I think, and actually have used some of that in the present book. And anyway, after about halfway through, I got too involved in other things. I was managing a Baroque orchestra in Vancouver. I had run an arts festival on Hornby Island in British Columbia, and was just chasing around over a lot of other things, and wrote a few blog pieces and that kind of thing. Then came the pandemic, and here I am stuck in Boston Bar in the middle of nowhere and not going anywhere. So I thought, well, let me get down to writing. And so I did. And I just really started poking around with things that interested me. And so it developed that way. So I sometimes wonder about this book in that way, and that it may not have a kind of consistent argument throughout. But my idea was essentially to present a lot of information, factual information, historical information, etc., and assume that people will draw their own conclusions about all of the promises that school has made since it's been 150 years or so since we've had compulsory school attendance, and what a complete failure it has been in doing what it says it does. In fact, when I was a teacher, I don't know if you know that, I was, the story gets complicated. But anyway, yeah, I was a graduate student in Los Angeles in music history, which was my major and still is a great fascination of mine. And my wife became pregnant. And I guess it was kind of on purpose, but then obviously I had to be the one to make the money. So I got a job as a teacher. It was very, very easy. This was 1956, I guess. There was a great teacher shortage, so I took one stupid course for one summer and then became a teacher. And it didn't take long to realize, wait a minute, this school system is a disaster. It does not do, it's really not, doesn't really educate or inform or anything else. It's essentially there to make sure that people remain ignorant and stupid. And it's very good at that. There's no question about that. So I didn't get out of school teaching for 10 years. I had to keep supporting my then growing family. But finally, in 1967, I was offered a job at an alternative school in Vancouver. And so took that. That was about that school fell apart because these so-called progressive parents were not really prepared for what their kids were going to do once all of the constraints were taken away. They thought, oh well, they will all rush to the books and wanting to learn things and everything. Of course not. They go, as anyone with experience working with children, once you remove the controls, the kids will go nuts because they've been under pressure for so long that they simply explode. And that you got to put up with that for a couple of months. It can be fun and exciting, a bit dangerous. You have to keep an eye out so nobody kills anybody. Anyway, that was what happened. And so about half of the parents in that school, this was a private school in Vancouver, half of the parents supported me and half didn't. So the half that supported me split off, and we started our own school, which was the Saturna Island Free School. And it was a school on one of the Gulf Islands here, Saturna Island. We were able to buy an absolutely spectacularly beautiful piece of property with a very old house and a number of outbuildings. And we started that year just not having the slightest clue what we were doing, but we had about 30 kids signed up, all ages, I think like 5 to 17. And it had to be a boarding school, of course, so we got food. And The parents paid, I think it was then about $1,000 a year, which is pretty reasonable. And it was, a wonderful madhouse. It was like a large community of kids and grown-ups, and it was fantastic. I won't go into why it all fell apart. I'll talk forever. But any other questions? That was what was the question now about the history of all this? Anyway, that's how I got it.
Yes, your creativity takes you from the question of passion in writing the book to the history. So actually, the central topic of the discussion today.
Well, that's why I wanted to write the book, because I saw how disastrous the public school system was, and how advantageous this kind of the idea of the free school, where there is no structure really other than that which is created by the people that are living together there. And it's very similar to the Summerhill idea, where there are no demands other than that. A.S. Neal says, you're free to do whatever you like as long as you don't interfere with someone else's freedom. So, and he called it freedom, not license. You can't go around bashing people over the head. But if you don't want to participate in games or lessons or anything, you don't have to. You can do whatever you like, again, as long as you don't harm somebody else.
So
Pretty simple rule.
Well, I have a related question, if I may.
Yeah, please.
What was it about? So if we're trying to build a unified model of Tom Durrie, what was it about 25-year-old Tom Durrie in 1956 that allowed him to see and feel so viscerally that schooling was ineffective? Like, presumably there are a lot of teachers who care about children, want them to thrive, and they don't notice that, or they don't feel that schooling should be abolished or changed significantly. They think that it's providing value to kids. So what was it about your experience or personality or upbringing or whatever it may be that allowed you to view it differently?
Yeah, good question. I should say I don't know. But looking back on it, the one course that I had taken, it was all this sort of idealistic view of what children were going to be like and how we were going to introduce them to all these wonderful things of reading and all that. And then it turns out the kids really weren't particularly interested in anything that the school was offering them. I remember trying to teach square root of all things. I thought, what a pointless thing. How often are these kids, most of whom, the first school I taught at, most of whom were migrant farm workers, right? Do they really need to know how to factor square root? I mean, it's just torture for them. And I kind of branched out. I did a few other things, probably a bit out of line, but it just occurred to me, well, I don't know, it's so obvious to anybody with a moderate degree of intelligence. If you spend any time in school, you can see what a complete disaster it is. How bad it's really not. It's worse than a disaster. It's damaging. It takes up the kids' time when they could be doing more interesting things and on their own. And anyway, that was what I saw right away. I was lucky then. After I taught at that one little sort of rural school for 1 year, and then I moved into in a small city in California. And I taught grade 5 for 2 years there, and had a great time. I mean, I did branch out a lot. I mean, and we had a lot of fun. And that at that time, the influence of John Dewey was pretty big in the schools, and so there was a lot of idea of student-directed learning. But you had to stimulate their interest in various things. But just jumping off from some of that stuff, we had quite a lot of fun, and the kids learned a lot, I think. But anyway, I got fired from that job. What I don't want to go into. That story is somewhere, I think, in the book. I shot off my mouth at teachers. My father was a union man and a socialist, and so I grew up just learning to speak my mind and not having to be really cautious and careful about offending anybody. And so that's what I did. I thought, well, this is free, supposedly free country, and I have strong opinions, and I will express them. Damn it! So I got fired as a result.
I think
Not directly. I got sort of oozed out, shall I say? I wasn't directly fired. They couldn't get away with that, but and that was why I moved to British Columbia. And I was very excited then to see a very strong teachers' union where people did actually say what they thought at teachers' meetings. But nobody was really criticizing the school system itself. That anyway, I was very critical of it all the time. It doesn't take long to realize how much of it is really involved about keeping kids under control. Teachers are judged by how quiet and obedient their students are, not so much by what they might actually be learning. So what they're really learning is that, you shut up and do what you're told, which is no way to prepare people for living in a democratic society, I don't think, anyway. I don't know if that answered your question at all, but it's just because it's just been. I was critical of school when I was a school kid myself.
Go ahead, Wiles. I think you're trying to get in here.
Yes, Tom, I think you need to know that Xander cannot entirely empathize with all those stories because he never went to school. And this reminds me that we would love to know how your philosophy affected your parenting and how about your kids at school?
Yeah. Well, I had three, right? Born 1957, 1960, 1962. So when I was a teacher and my oldest became school age, he went to school. In a small rural school. We were living then in Williams Lake, British Columbia. I was teaching school there. I was teaching grade 7, which was great fun. A wonderful age of kids, by the way. Great humor. We had a wonderful time. Where was I? Yes, and so Miles, our oldest boy, started school. He didn't mind it. He was skipped right away from grade 1 to grade 3, and that was it for 2 years. My daughter started 1 year. Had a horrible teacher, and we pretty well kept her out. And then that was until 1967 when we moved back to Vancouver, and were then at the new school, and my kids were there, so that was essentially a free school. And they were at the free school on Saturna Island as well for those 3 years. And when I was divorced in 1970, the kids were, they were with me part of the time. They were with my wife, who then wanted them to go to school. And they did go. Again, they were living on one of the Gulf Islands, and they went to the school there for a short time. They enjoyed it thoroughly because they had a wonderful woman was teaching there. A woman who was such a good teacher, she quit teaching shortly thereafter because she obviously realized what a waste of time it was for her. She was smart, and the kids loved her, and they still, in fact, my younger son still keeps in touch with her after all these years. Then they moved to another smallish city in British Columbia, Nanaimo, but they didn't go to school there at all. So they were old enough. They were young in their teens then, or I don't know. Michael must have been around 10. Maybe he told me he went to a junior secondary school for 1 day, and he went, and then he came home and he said, "No, this is too much like jail. I'm not going back." So that was that. So they had virtually no schooling at all, maybe a year somewhere along the line there, a bit here and there. then they eventually got into working. So let's see. My older son, he started doing bicycle repair. And then he did that for quite a few years, but he always wanted to be a writer. Even at the free school, he and another guy had they put out a very funny little news sheet from time to time called the Free School Freakout. Anyway, it was great fun. And then, so he did, as he said, he did bicycle repair for a while, but he wasn't crazy about that. Still wanted to be a writer. When his grandmother died, my wife's mother, she was fairly well off, and she left the kids each several tens of thousands of dollars. So Miles used that to go to a journalism school in Vancouver, where he went for 1 year, then got a job as a reporter in a small town newspaper, and that was that. He didn't go back to that course. He moved forward. Then he was editor of a small town paper, then editor of a larger town paper, and then finally one of the editors of the Calgary Herald. With Calgary, as you may know, is a major city in Canada. And so that's what he did that for any number of years, and wrote and became a professional editor, essentially. Did a lot of copy editing and other things. Very brilliant man, very much missed since he died 2 years ago now, sadly, of cancer at the age of 63. My daughter, Emily, I hope you're not getting bored with all of this. So my wife died of cancer several years after the divorce. It was very, very tough for the kids, of course. Anyway, my daughter, Emily, at age 15, started working in a jewelry store where Michael had worked there. Yeah, Michael got into that as well. Michael, the youngest, he wanted to be a goldsmith for a long time. But anyway, well, let's talk about Emily. She worked there helping, and she learned bookkeeping because the guy needed some help with that. So little by little, she figured that out, learned how to do that. Then she's always been big on horses and wanted to have horses. Eventually, she moved to Washington State, where she worked at a jewelry store for a while. Then she worked at a veterinary clinic. Soon became, because of her talents and ability and smartness, she became managerial, not just doing bookkeeping, but pretty well running things. And then she had the job that she now has in a managerial position with the Department of Highways in the state of Washington. She's married, no kids, but married very, very happily. A young man who's actually 10 years younger than she is. He absolutely adores her, which I'm always very pleased with when I see. He leaves her little love messages and all kinds of things. Anyway, it's most delightful. Michael, who's the youngest, started out, as I said, he wanted to be a goldsmith, and did that for a while. Went in San Francisco, worked there. Then when he inherited the money from his grandmother, he went to Germany to study design in Hanau, a place near Frankfurt. And somehow or other, he got into doing translation, because he was getting fluent in German, and doing translations, German to English. And from that, he's branched into becoming a business consultant. And now, at the age, he's just turned 60, he works all over the world. He gives lectures at universities. He's just been attending the economic conference in Davos and writes articles, well known in his field, and is very successful, makes lots of money. So I understand he pays for me to go visit every once in a while, which is most welcome. So yeah, that's kind of, and so I can say that all three of them really had minimal schooling, if any, hardly any. And they simply did what they wanted to do. And when they didn't say, oh my God, I've got to have yay many courses or a degree or something like that. Nonsense. They just went ahead and did it. And you see my son Miles, who was major editor of a major newspaper had never even been to high school. So, but nobody ever asks that, you know. It's so
Right.
getting a degrees and all that are just it's ridiculous.
That's wonderful. And I
My,
also want to say it's so great to hear the obvious love and affection you have for your children. Just
I
to hear
do,
you
yeah.
speak about them that way. That's wonderful.
I see my daughter fairly often because we're close. Michael lives in Germany, of course. I don't see him that often, but we talk on the phone fairly often. He is an opera lover, as I am, so we have a lot to talk about in that regard. My daughter lives not far from here. We get together for lunch from time to time and communicate regularly.
That's wonderful. I think Norman was. Did you pull him up here? I think he has a question. Go ahead, Norman, if you want to unmute yourself and ask.
Yeah, Tom, thank you so much for sharing all of that with your family. I think I don't know how it feels sometimes to talk into the void in this kind of chat, but it's really helpful to see positive examples of what free learning and almost no schooling can have on people. I wanted to ask a question regarding the inheritances because I've never heard a positive inheritance story ever. So I think it's awesome that all three of your kids.
This was very positive, yeah.
Yeah, that all of your kids use the inheritance very constructively, and maybe it's just kind of what's nowadays mimetic or more often heard. Do you attribute that to them not having been in school or having a lot of freedom to realize what their goals are, or do you think that's a product of your times of when they were growing up?
Well, both. I think it has to do with their sense of the whole thing about kids who are brought up free, shall we say, without being managed all the time. They have the sense that whatever they do is on their own initiative. And so, my life is my own. I can run my own life. I can do what I want to do. And that is essentially what kids who are free learn that, I think, more than anything else, that nobody's going to tell me what to do. I can do whatever I want to do. I am capable of doing whatever I want to do. And if there's something I want to do, I'm just going to go do it. That awesome. Is a rather important life lesson, I would say.
Yeah, did you, so I think, and especially, and I don't know if everyone else has a similar experience. I'm kind of a parent and I live in California as well, where almost the majority of all the other children's experience, including my immediate family, is very controlled. It's very much in opposition to how we're doing things. In order to kind of quell even my maybe extended family members' worries, how can we best, how do you recommend we best support our children who are not going to school to transition into a career? And also, how do you recommend we persuade maybe either naysayers or concerned, I guess, partisans or people who are close to us family-wise but are concerned that maybe this is not the best way or that maybe they're missing out on opportunities?
That's a tough one, I know. Because the whole idea of school is so deeply ingrained in our society, even though it hasn't been around that long. People seem to feel that kids have had to go to school forever, but they haven't. And I don't know how you can explain this to people otherwise, because people will say, if they don't go to school, they're going to end up, they'll never get a job, they'll never know how to do anything, they won't be able to read or anything else. And of course, that's completely wrong. But I don't know how you persuade people otherwise, other than to just say, well, you may be right, but this is the way we're doing things.
Can I answer the same question with just one sentence? Because I feel very strongly, Norman, that you should just ignore naysayers and explain your philosophy to those who are interested. In other words, that's what Tom said. He never cared about other people's opinion. He just did his own thing. And the same you have to do exactly your thing. So if you have naysayers complaining, just ignore them. And as far as the support for children, I believe, they just need rich environments. If you are around there to help, great. If you are not, just the rich environment.
Yeah. My older son always said this, that after all, children learn how to talk and how to walk without instruction. Nobody sits down and gives them lessons on how to walk. If they did, we'd probably all be lifelong cripples. I don't know, but then why should we say then that nobody can learn to read if they don't go to school and have lessons in reading, and nobody can learn how to add and subtract if they don't have lessons in it? Because so many of the most important things in life we don't have lessons in. Children learn on their own, and because they do. Children are very curious and very capable of learning all kinds of things. I mean, my kids knew how to read before they went to school. I don't know how they learned, but we read to them all the time, and they just got the idea that, oh yeah, this is what reading is, and so they just did it. So I guess part of what you need to do is to talk the basic intelligence of children and young people, and that you have faith in their ability, in their natural ability to learn and to develop in the best possible way. I don't know. It works that way.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm fortunate. My wife is very supportive. What I found out is I get in a lot of debates nowadays. If people ask about certain things and they'll talk, some people will really, even when I'm maybe not trying to debate, I'll end up getting in a debate. But at some point,
yeah,
in time,
I know
it's
hard not to. Yeah.
Yeah, I think hopefully the example, and so far it's really worked out. So I hope the example set it will be enough long term. They'll figure it out. So
yeah,
thank you.
If I could just provide this, perhaps this would be helpful just from a first person perspective. I don't feel any need at all to convince people of anything. It's just, to me, reality has already demonstrated that, you can learn to read without going to school and all these things. So I don't even feel any need at all to convince people of anything. So that's my first person perspective of it. So perhaps that's how your kids will feel as well.
I think the difference between Xander and Norman is that Norman grew up in an environment where school was normative, while for Xander there was no school and never problem. So that makes it easier. Tom, I have a big guns question. What kind of education you envisage for the planet? What if you were the Minister of Education for the whole planet? What would you change?
I don't know. Well, first of all, I think we have to allow freedom to learn. I think I don't know. I'm all for education. I'm all for people knowing things and learning things, and that comes out of native curiosity, not because somebody says you have to. So I think what we need to do is enable learning rather than to administer it. Yeah. I keep recommending this book, and I've probably mentioned it about 20 times in the course of my book, and it's a book by a man named Frank Smith. He was a professor of education at the University of Victoria, wrote a number of books on reading, but this one little book, about 100 pages, called The Book of Learning and Forgetting. And he says that learning is the most natural thing in the world. We do it all the time. Every minute of the day, we are learning something. And it comes out of experience and contact with other people, not what he calls this classic learning and I can't remember what he calls the other, but the learning that comes with school that is prescribed and set down by you have to do this and you have to do that. And what you really learn there is that learning is difficult and it takes a lot of effort and has to be tested and has to be taught. And that's what you learn. Whereas if natural learning happens regularly all the time. So to enable learning, I think we need to enable the possibility that children can have a wide variety of experiences by knowing educated people, knowing people who are thoughtful and who are actually doing things. I often say, like musicians or serious musicians who work hard, and carpenters, craftspeople, all kinds of people who do things because that's what they want to do, and they are passionate about doing them. And that's how you learn things, by associating with people like that. And so I don't know, how do we enable that? I think
I recall a more radical version of your reform, which I would summarize as fire the teachers, keep the buildings.
Yeah, sure. Well, I don't know what you would do with the buildings. I suggested turning them into housing or something like that. There are probably, there are some good teachers, not very many. There are one or two, like the woman that my kids had when they went to the little school on Main Island. I think it was a one-room school or maybe two. But this woman, her name was Pat James, by the way. She was also a very intelligent and knowledgeable person herself. And so she didn't believe in pushing kids into things. They did a lot of interesting things together, and the kids loved her. It's one thing about free school kids. The free school kids I know who ended up going to public school found it all very enjoyable, because they kind of sat back and just watched the whole scene and thought how stupid all the other kids were with their carrying on and doing their silly little rebellious things. And the other kids, they just said, okay, sure, this is all right. I can do I can easily do what they want me to do. It doesn't take much brains to do what school demands, so why fight it? Not many, and I don't know many of the kids, the free school kids that I knew who ended up going to public school, didn't last at it very long because they found it to be such a waste of time. But they also saw how funny it was, how ridiculous, what it did to the other kids, how it made them also act so stupid, right?
Tom, I have a difficult question for you, because with at least 2 or 3 people present in the audience, I mean primarily Łukasz and Vito, we had discussions about how the school reform might look like, and we would like to propose it in Poland. And I would like you to listen to just 3 short points which we came up with, and we call it the law for freedom. If this is congruent, if it agrees with your intuition about how the education system might look like.
Okay.
And if Łukasz or Vito would like to correct me or speak for me, then I'll be happy to step off. Point number 1 is we decree that nobody has a right to force children to anything in the area of education. So that would be no coercion point. Point number 2 will be we provide a little bit of financial support in the form of school vouchers. That's an idea from Milton Friedman. Every child gets a little bit of money to spend on a school. In other words, if you wanted to go to your free school, there wouldn't be $1,000 per year. It would be a payment with money provided by the state from the taxes. So a tiny amount of money for kids to invest in their education. And the third thing would be about what we have right now. In other words, we wouldn't fire teachers, but we will pass all this mess to the hands of local authority. We call it self-government. In other words, locally, everyone would decide if individual educational units can function efficiently in conditions of freedom. In other words, if a school can survive the fact that kids are free and can leave at any minute if they are unhappy with the level of education. I'm not sure I made it clear. Vito or Łukasz, maybe they will comment, or maybe Tomek. And Tom, did I present it in an understandable way?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there was a time when I spoke very much in favor of voucher education. That is, everybody is given a voucher, a certain amount of money, as you were saying, to do whatever they wanted. If they wanted to send their kids to a school, they could do that. If they wanted to spend that money traveling or whatever, they could do whatever they wanted with it. In other words, which is a good start in giving people some kind of responsibility and freedom in doing what they want to do. I think if we could even just start by saying that to parents, you are responsible for your children's education. Now you figure out what to do. And some people, yeah, because school is probably the easiest, and it's as I've said, it's kind of built into, we think that it's a natural thing that children go to school. But once you can break that belief, and probably just giving people a more freedom of choice is a way to start. I don't like to say any way to reform the school system. I say get rid of it and then figure out what we're going to do about education, if anything. Yeah, I don't know. And the other points were, you can't coerce anybody into learning something. It doesn't work anyway. You might as well face it that it's interesting that I tried teaching music at the little school here, the local school. I thought, well, gee, I'll go teach music. So I thought these kids are completely uncontrollable unless you yell at them and threaten them, and which the teachers are doing all the time. And I thought, well, isn't that ridiculous? These kids have been here for several years. They're constantly being trained in being quiet and to behave themselves and all that. As soon as someone like me is put in front of them and I'm not yelling at them and telling them to sit up straight and be quiet, they go nuts, right? So in other words, this whole system of training them to behave doesn't work. It has quite the opposite effect, as a matter of fact. So if people would just realize that somehow or other, I don't know. It's so curious that we don't have that kind of faith. You know, think about manners. How often do you hear parents saying to the child, now what do you say? You have to say thank you and all that sort of stuff. Never in my life once did I tell my kids what you have to do to be polite, because we were always polite. My wife and I were polite, intelligent people. And the kids became that way too, just because children want to be part of this situation they find themselves in. I mean, their family, even you find kids who are in abusive families, they don't want to be taken out of those because their survival depends on being part of that. So, I'm sorry, I'm rattling off probably on something else, but
no, I agree entirely. It's extremely important. Yes.
Yeah. So in other words, this whole idea of instruction and training has exactly the opposite effect. So somehow or other, we have to get people to understand that by pointing it out to them constantly. They look what these kids are doing. As soon as they're out of school, all they can think about is getting into drugs and getting into trouble one way or another, because the school is crushed all initiative and all interest in anything. So, of course, I mean, I would do the same thing. When I was going to school myself, it wasn't so much drugs, but we certainly got into drinking beer as soon as we could, as soon as we could get our hands on it. And I think I first started about age 15 or something like that, because alcohol was the only thing available. But also because I was interested in art and music and literature and everything else, and I had several, some other friends who were, and so we would get together and have great gab sessions, and we would read books we were not supposed to be reading, books that had sex in them, that sort of thing, I mean, after all, we try to control so much all the time, and I don't know, we need to loosen up a bit. I see people, it's an attitude that we have about children, like that they're savages and they need to be trained and instructed and disciplined and all that kind of nonsense. And again, it has exactly the opposite effect that we think it does.
It's a pity that in this hand raising chat you cannot see the faces because everybody is laughing at this moment. I can
Good.
see it through. Tom, there is then a tiny difference between your approach and mine, and I think having fought for 60 years, you're right to be impatient and want to be the minister who will fire the teachers. However, I think that third point of our plan is just leave everything to evolution. So don't put people at the deep end of the swimming pool. Just let them evolve slowly towards freedom, and that would include teachers. They could also have a chance to adapt and improve, and the weak ones would be eliminated through a natural evolution.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
And
that's fine. That would work too. In other words, there's a school going on, but attendance is completely voluntary. I think that was Summerhill too. There were classes, lessons, but attendance at them was completely voluntary. So particularly older kids who thought, well, gee, I wanted to pass this exam or do something like that. So they would learn things that would take 3 or 4 years. They would learn them in a couple of months, right? So that's usually what happens. So when you start learning something because you really want to, then it all happens very easily and very quickly. It's not as laborious as being forced to learn something that you don't want to learn just so you can pass a test, and then of course you will forget everything immediately thereafter. So what's the point?
In the 47th minute, I would like to inject a dose of crazy optimism.
Please.
In Poland, we came up with the following idea: that on a specific day, all students will angrily say no more and refuse instruction. We call it school strike or student strike.
Yeah.
I think if this is well coordinated and well synchronized, it must work. There will be no police with truncheons in Poland. This is a nice country.
Mm-hmm.
But when all students at the same time say no, we can change the law, we can change the reality and provide a shining beacon for the rest of the world. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. Sounds like a great idea. Anything that puts some power in the hands of young people. So they live, yes, this is something we can do. We don't have to obey authority all the time. We do some constructive, powerful things on our own. And if it's a strike at school, why not? I think it sounds like a great idea.
And at this point, I would express my gratefulness because, Tom, you are providing one of those tools. My 3 colleagues from Poland in the audience, they don't know that yet. But Tom Durrie has approved of a school strike, and his face will show on a school strike banner. So I hope this will have an incredible psychological impact, because the difference, some of the kids who participate, the youngest kid on the banner is exactly 9 times younger than you. So this is the full representation of approaches, brains, and thinking. I know it's only a psychological factor at this moment because we still don't know how to overcome the intimidation and disbelief. But we have Peter Gray, we have Tom Durrie. That's going to be a powerful message.
Yeah, it's a good start. I mean, anything that empowers young people to confront authority or to resist it, whatever. Yes, I'm all for it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I propose we make a 2-minute technical break. I'll check if the recording is going on because today I'm one of the technical guys at the same time. And we can now move to the voice chat. So maybe, Tom, you're less familiar with Discord. Can you see the voice chat icon?
Voice chat icon. Voice connected. Where is it?
It
I'm
should be
not sure.
somewhere
Oh,
on the
text
left.
for voice,
Oh, that's
voice
underneath.
chat. Oh, yes. Yeah, okay.
If you click it
Good.
now,
Yeah.
everyone is interrupting. So I say, guys, that's the voice chat. Everybody's speaking over everybody else. Except I didn't realize nobody heard me.
Oh, I hear you.
I am proud to say that I had a visual on the recording, and I wasn't interrupting much. I was really showing up on the sound wave, not too often. So
Sure. Yeah.
for me, it's always difficult. Maybe that's why this hand raising chat is good, especially for someone who is as creative. You get fantastic memory. So when you speak about your kids, you provide that much detail that naturally an interesting story blows up. So then you cannot be interrupted, or the story will disintegrate. Oh, hello,
Hello.
Lucas. Lucas. I didn't recognize Lucas. Hello.
I have one question for Tom.
Please.
Yeah, so basically, I was thinking about something in recent days, and just to give you an example of what I was thinking about, when there is a new product or a new software or something like that, sometimes it just clicks and people are becoming more and more interested with it. Sometimes they just don't even know why they're interested with it. And I was just thinking, if the current school system was, let's say, popularized like 150 years ago or something like that, mm, why is it still popular today? Like, is it just convenient for parents that they just throw away their children for a couple of hours every day and they don't need to worry about them? Like, what's your view on that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's really interesting because, yeah, why are parents so eager to give up any kind of participation in their children's growth and learning? And more now we hear about daycare. People want to send their kids to daycare. No, we're all going to institutionalize our children, right, from practically from birth. And it's tragic, and unfortunately with the economic system, a lot of families can't exist on one income. So it's not just one of the parents that's working, they both have to work. Which means that either they shouldn't be having children in the first place, or else the children are going to have to be cared for by somebody else. And rather than using grandparents and uncles and aunties or whoever's available, the government is eager to provide institutions of so-called trained experts in childcare, which is a bit frightening, but anyway, yeah. So it's a built-in way of society thinking, isn't it? That children have to be taken care of outside of the family. When, if we look at, before there was such a thing as school, and kids learned at home, and they learned from their family and their parents. Like of the statistics on reading, on literacy, actually in the 18th century, around the time of the American Revolution, the level of literacy, at least according to Neil Postman, who looked into this thoroughly, the level of literacy was extremely high. People were reading Thomas Paine's book, which, if you actually look at it, I mean, the language is like the language of Shakespeare, the language of the King James Bible. And a lot of kids learn to read from the King James Bible, actually, which is, I mean, it's the language of Shakespeare. And people became highly literate. Since the introduction of compulsory schooling, the rate of literacy in the population has descended continuously till now. The statistics show that about 50% of the population is functionally illiterate. Thank you very much for 100 and some years of school, right?
Yeah.
And people
Pete,
don't like to read, or if they do, they read trashy novels or something. People have lost sense of curiosity. I mean, I know very few people who read books, that is, and they're not interested. You try to talk about something that you've been reading, and they're not interested. They will spend a lot of time watching television, I guess. But yeah, so school has essentially destroyed curiosity, interest in intellectual pursuits, and just interested in accomplishment. People like to accomplish things, whether it's writing a book or reading 25 books or building a house or inventing something or just doing doing creative things and things that you're interested in and keen on. It's gone.
I'm writing. Yes.
Quoted Albert Einstein, who said something. He said he didn't know very much about mathematics and physics. He was just extremely curious. So, I mean, you never can know very much about mathematics or physics when you really get down to it, can you? You can't really know very much about it. You know a little bit. But the more curious you are, the more you will want to find out all the time.
Always an exception. He knows all mathematics to the last detail.
I was thinking
That's true.
Mathematics.
That's his passion. That's his passion.
Okay.
One of the things I'm really ignorant about, and something that that's something I really want to know about, and I wish I had just had more time to do that.
Yes.
Mathematics and economics. I'm really interested in economics, but man, is it ever hard to get your head around.
Look, you just learn math, and then at the age of 105, you write a book, How I Learned Math at 100.
How I learned long division.
No, something useful, really something useful. And kids will be greatly relieved. If you can learn math at 100, why would I be scared about what the teacher tells me at school? But
well, exactly. Why not learn math when it's important to you? Otherwise, you'll simply forget it. I mean, of all those kids who labored over factoring square root, I bet not a single one of them remembered it a month later or a week later. I don't remember it either, and I taught how to do it. I couldn't begin to. And you just want to factor square root, get a calculator.
So speaking of maths and physics, Tom, can you say something? What kind of memories of maths and physics you have with regard to your school years, like 100 years ago?
Yeah, 100 years ago. Well, I mean, basic arithmetic. I mean, I don't use those things anymore. I mean, of course I can add, subtract, and do long division, but I don't bother. I usually just go to a calculator, because I know it's not going to make the mistakes I might make. I remember a little bit of algebra that was, I have a basic notion of what an equation is, but I couldn't really do very much with it. But if I wanted to, I could definitely delve into that a little more if it would be interesting to do that. Geometry, which I remember taking a course in geometry, it was fun using the protractor and the compass and that sort of thing. That was the best part of that course. Chemistry, well, in my day as kids, we had chemistry sets. I'm sure now they're considered far too dangerous, but we used to fiddle around and make sulfuric acid and blow up bottles of hydrogen and all kinds of things like that. But you can't do that anymore, I guess. I don't know. Some of those things were interesting, and probably would have got into them anyway if I'd wanted to. My main interest as a young person was in music. I played the piano, still do somewhat, but I had my day of being a pianist, and I lost interest. Yeah?
You have been shaped by blind musicians. I think it's a very interesting story about how you adapt to an environment that shapes you for life.
Blind piano technicians.
Technicians.
Yeah,
okay.
the two guys at the piano store where I used to hang out on Saturdays. Yeah, I used to sit with them and talk to them and watch them. Both of them had great sense of humor, and they would these tiny little, little screws and bushings and things. They would fit. They knew how to repair a grand piano and how to regulate and do all that kind of stuff. And with a little, they were so adept. At even a sighted person would have difficulty with these tiny little bits and pieces that go to make up a piano action, and yet they knew how to do it, and they did. And it's fascinating to watch them and to talk with them, and they were more than willing to have me sit with them and chat, and they both told jokes and had great sense of humor and all that. So I remember once, one of them was older and one was younger. I don't remember particularly. I was only about 10 or 11 myself. Anyway, one of them asked me to go get him a soda pop of some sort. So I came back. It was a drink called Squirt at the time, and I think it had kind of a grapefruit flavor or something. And he took one drink of it and he said, "This tastes like tiger piss." And I said, "How do you know?" Anyway, when you, as a little kid, hanging out with grown-ups who were not teachers, I learned a lot. I learned a lot of dirty jokes and all kinds of great stuff like that. And different approaches to life. You just need. I think that the important thing is that just kids need a chance to just hang out with people of all kinds.
I'm still thinking about this question by Lucas, and I think you mentioned convenience of schooling and a little bit of inertia, but I think we have to yet speak about indoctrination. The school is showing you wrong ways to learn and go through the whole education process, and it is a form of indoctrination. You develop habits which stay with you for life, and through the force of inertia, you continue to the next generation. And yet there is the third factor, which is vested interest. The school lobby, the teachers, they are perpetuators of many myths, sometimes to the degree that an incredibly intelligent man can repeat an incredibly stupid myth. Mm-hmm. And the only explanation I can have is that he doesn't want the edifice of education to collapse. Because when those myths get dismantled, the old system has no right to exist. Yeah. So I put it in points for Lucas. I think it's indoctrination, mindlessness, which produces inertia, vested interest, and convenience. So maybe we'll come up with more points, and I think it would be nice to put it as a question answer point somewhere in our materials. Because nobody really explained that point by point. So,
yeah. Are you familiar with John Taylor Gatto, Gatto? Yes. A couple of books, very highly critical of the school system. He most of it is more or less just ranting on his own. He was an award-winning teacher for a while in New York. His first book was called Dumbing Us Down, and he talks about how school suppresses intelligence and learning. And the other one, a very brilliant title, Weapons of Mass Instruction. Anyway, they're worth reading, very much just condemning of the school system, and what teaching that nothing is worth pursuing for more than 45 minutes or whatever it is. And no matter how interested in something you might be, when the bell rings, it's all over. Then you go on to the next thing. And so it kind of destroys any interest that might be there. Maybe you really are interested in algebra. But the bell rings and then you have to go to Latin class or something. So then you have to start all over again the next time. Doesn't make any sense. So maybe just a real condemnation of, and this is what he does, really real condemnation of the school system and how off it is when it comes to, if we're really talking education, it's quite the opposite thereof. I don't know. Anyway,
I think there is one thing you may not be fully aware when you speak about that so many years of schooling, coercive schooling did so much damage to society, and you speak about literacy. There is yet one factor in Poland which you don't see in Canada. It is that it's very easy to teach kids to read like robots without comprehension. So while unschooler can look at the text and understand without reading, I mean, I'm maybe unable to read, I still understand the text. For a kid in Poland, it's very easy to read and understand nothing, because this is a very easy conversion from text to sounds. And I have a 10-year-old friend who's been tortured at school about dyslexia, about therapy, about being delayed and not so smart. This kid is in a way damaged already, because when he reads for me, he has to speak. In other words, he needs to enter this robotic mode. Because he needs to keep this mind focused on what's going in front of his eyes. Very, very sad. And in a sense, English makes it harder to get into this robotic mode, but at the same time, it's easier to fall into some dyslectic problems because of intimidation and coercion.
Yeah. Well, we have all those things here too, like all of the reading, the learning disabilities and the dyslexia. And it's an excuse for the schools to hire all high-priced experts that come in. And of course, it accomplishes nothing other than to suppress any desire kids may ever have. And there's no why should everybody be expected to learn to read when they're 6 years old? I might not learn to read until I'm 20. So what? Doesn't matter. I'll learn to read when I need to. Yes, I remember I didn't really. I mean, I knew how to read, I guess, from the first time they ever showed me. Oh yeah, this is how you read. Oh yeah, okay. So that was it. But I didn't really discover reading and the pleasure of reading until I was maybe 16 or something like that. And it was partly because I had friends who were reading, and we read books we shouldn't be reading. But that's how we learned about reading, because there I learned from my friends. Yeah, this is fantastic. We could read books and talk about them. And my father belonged to the Book of the Month Club, and I remember getting some of those. And we weren't supposed to be reading them as kids because they had sex in them and that sort of thing. But I read read books. I read literature and loved it. Couldn't talk about it with the teachers, or I would be shamed. But anyway, I think that that's reading is one of the great things that we're able to do. Literacy is fantastic. It's wonderful, and it's the way we communicate and with other people. And you communicate with the writer if you're reading a great novel or something like that. I've been lately reading Pepys' diaries. Samuel Pepys, who wrote his diaries in 1680. So from the time he was about 30 until he died. Absolutely fascinating. And suddenly, I have a feeling I know this man. and what it would have been like to live in 1680 of all things. Yeah. And the kind of life that he led and what he did. They did a lot of drinking, that's for sure. But hanging out with friends and dallying with other women than his wife and so on. Anyway, fascinating, absolutely fascinating. But this is one of the great things about reading too, is just getting to know the depth of experience that other people have had. You may not have that yourself, but you can experience it directly from somebody else.
Maybe something you don't know about me. I love to spread it as an anecdote, as a proof. then went to school. In primary school, I read a lot of books, lots of novels. I took them to summer camps. I always had a book with me. I would read passionately. And then compulsory reading came, and today I'm a hater of literature. And even often I try to overcome this feeling and try to read. And actually, a couple of times I was a little bit successful getting through a few pages of a novel. But I'm 60. And for so many years, I was deprived of one of the treasures. So Samuel Pepys, you know.
Yeah, fascinating. I've had those books sitting on my shelf for a long time, and I thought, okay, well, let me have crack into this. I mean, we've all heard about Samuel Pepys, how practically every diary entry goes, and so too bad. So as his day ends at almost any hour of the time, night or day. Anyway, yes, reading is one of the great joys and pleasures of life.
Tom, I think we disagree on one point, that as much as reading is a fantastic pleasure for us, the new generation will find equally exhilarating forms of learning in forms of YouTube, which you may disapprove of.
I don't know. I don't disapprove at all.
No.
I'm very curious about how it all is going to work and play out. I mean, there's so much that is misleading in computer technology, particularly in social media, and I don't know. I don't know where it's going to go. I just think that any young person who really has a chance to experience life with other people will not be. You can use social media. I use it. I don't use it much, but I do look at it. And we have on the local scene. We have a local Facebook page where local news and stuff is posted, and so it certainly has its advantages. But I think we look at it as one of the many tools of communication and learning. I mean, use email. When I think of all of the letters we used to write, I used to write letters all the time, like pages and pages of handwritten letters. I try every once in a while to write a handwritten letter, but it's well, why bother? I can just send an email.
Yeah. Okay, so yes, that's an adaptation to new environments, and I would like to compare a couple of lives of Tom Durrie, Peter Gray, myself, and the new generation. Tom Durrie spoke to blind tuners. Peter Gray was immensely influenced by the fact that when he was like 4, 5, or 6, he had an older girlfriend. He learned a great deal from her, and that was his mode of learning for a great deal of his life. I found books, science books, very, very early, and that was my way. I mean, I didn't learn from other people like you. I just read it from text, scientific science books. That's my passion. And I see now the new generation, they learn a lot from YouTube and other sources. Now ChatGPT, I'm telling you, ChatGPT is going to be a sensation for literate kids. And I learned how to learn from YouTube. If you, there are certain skills which you learn better from YouTube. For example, playing a musical instrument. That's an excellent example. Even fixing a computer, because you can read diagrams, but fixing a computer, sometimes you need to know the touch, how strong you're going to push a thing to just to relax. Going to push the screw in there or not? So there are many things you can learn better from YouTube. So now the next generation will just combine all the sources of knowledge: interaction, social media, YouTube, text, ChatGPT. Actually, they have the best world to learn, and this is one of the most destructive factors for the old system, because the kids hate school more and more, and they can see the potential what they can do on their own and what they can do in prison.
Yeah, I love YouTube myself. I use it a lot. You need to know how to fix a washing machine, you can find it there. You want a recipe, you can get one there.
You send me an opera. Nice opera.
And opera too. You want to hear an opera that doesn't get performed very often, you'll probably find it there. You want to hear some of the great singers of the past. I know when I was lecturing on opera at Simon Fraser University here up till about 4 years ago or so, I guess, when the traveling got to be too expensive. But I did a course on Caruso on acoustic recording. And I made a compilation of all of his recordings. It's all on YouTube. All the recordings that Caruso made from 1906 to 1928, something like that. Amazing. It's all there. And it's fantastic. The resource is, if you look at my book, I mean, there's so much of it is taken from internet research, from scholarly articles to books. You can find the full text of say books by Rousseau and other philosophers and other writers on education and all kinds of things. Anyway, it's the resource. It's a phenomenal resource. There's no question. I don't knock it at all. It's fantastic.
In our conversation, I wanted to reveal something to our friends about your writing mode. For a long while, you spoke about writing a book, but you never had any deadlines, any plans. So I thought like you planned to write it for another 10 years.
Yes.
And then in December, suddenly the book was finished. That was a nice surprise. But
Yeah.
it speaks of your creative mode, that you just relax, you just write what you think is important, you compile it into one coherent piece, and then bang, it's ready. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I just wrote till I thought, okay, that's enough. I'm tired of writing.
And I'm telling you that this book, for that reason, for that creative reason, this book is great for incremental reading. I'm not you probably don't know the term incremental reading, but my friends might know. When you read, sometimes you read from page 47 and then you read page 447. This is fantastic because the book is full of meat. You did a lot of research, lots of quotations, a lot of meaty knowledge. That's why I call it.
Well,
that's why I fell in love with it very fast, because you can read it incrementally.
I'm really glad, because I always thought that's one of the shortcomings of the book. As I mentioned earlier, it's not a consistent sort of well thought out argument.
But that will be a disaster. That's what people do. They have a deadline, and they need to hurry with this deadline. Actually, perhaps Vito will confirm that we have a fantastic writer, and I thought he'll be very active in our school strike and help us. No, he set up another deadline. He's writing another book. Those books are great. Those books are great, but I have lots of skepticism about his deadlines. That he's always, almost a book. Every 6 months, you get a book.
Yeah. Well, I'm writing another book too. Not much right now. I've written about 30,000 words, but it's something completely different. It's just a collection of stories of my life. Silly things that have happened, like how I got expelled from high school, how I got fired from my teaching job in California, about cats that I've had as pets, about my father. Anyway, a bunch of stuff like that.
This will be precious, especially if your first book makes big waves. And
we'll see.
That's I would love to. I would love this to see this happen. And then understanding Tom Durrie will be extremely important, because that rebellious nature of yours, that was extremely helpful in your whole reasoning.
Yes, I know. So, I am rebellious.
Great material for historians.
Yeah.
All those little stories make a man.
Well, yeah. I mean, life is full of funny things. I mean, not funny, but things that are. Yeah, I mean, if you can't laugh, then you might as well give up now.
When you live to 93, life is full of funny things. If it's not, you don't live to 93. And and
That's
sadly,
right. Well, yeah, I
for a
mean,
great deal of for a
life is
great deal
curious.
of
It's a curious experience.
so that's part of my motivation in this fight, that we have a sad society, and we could have, you know, totally different society.
Yeah.
I can feel it.
Yeah. This is what I find so sadly missing in so many people is a sense of humor.
Mhm.
You know, they seem incapable of, you can tell them of a filthy joke and they don't see it. They may chuckle a bit, but they don't get into big laughing about it because, you know, I mean, I know lots of dirty jokes.
Excellent.
You know, if
Can you
over
tell us
living a
one?
long time, you collect them.
I knew it would come. Well, yes, I vote for yes.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Can you tell us a dirty joke?
Yeah, sure. This was okay. This is one of my favorites. Okay, little Johnny was in school, and the teacher said, "Today we will study the meaning of the word indifferent." Now, does anyone here know what the word indifferent means? And little Johnny raises his hand and says, I know what it is. Oh, really, Johnny? So how do you know? What is the meaning of the word indifferent? He said, well, the other night, my brother and his girlfriend were in the parlor and they had the door closed. They wouldn't let me in. But I was listening at the door and I heard him say, oh yeah, no, sorry, I missed part of it because Johnny says, indifferent, that means better. And, oh, where did you get the idea that the word indifferent means better? Well, I was listening to my big brother and his girlfriend in the parlor. They wouldn't let me in. I was listening at the door, and I heard him say, is that better? And she said, yes, it's indifferent.
Look, so you remind me.
You get it?
Yes.
No, I don't. I don't.
It's indifferent.
Indifferent.
Is that better? Yes, it's indifferent.
I'm so sorry. Can someone explain it to me?
Full like mathematics.
Well, what was the older brother and girlfriend doing that they wouldn't let Johnny in?
Probably having sex.
They were fucking, right? And so she says, is that better? He says, is that better? And she said, yes, it's indifferent.
Get it? What do you mean by different?
It's indifferently, let's put it that way.
Oh, yes. Indifferent.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
So you remind me. You remind me.
I was
a
thinking
joke.
of something like that, but I didn't see the link until you said indifferently.
I think I've known that one since I was 12 years old.
Okay, Tom.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Let me say one. If you stumble, maybe it'll be easier for me to stumble. There is one joke I can say.
Okay.
So, where's the beginning? Damn it! See, you need social situation to speak, repeat those jokes often enough to make it work. Anyway, I think it was like Johnny comes to his mom or sisters, something like, I found the condom on the veranda. And his sister says, what does this word mean? Damn it, I messed it up. Anyway, the kids knew what's the condom, they didn't know what's a veranda. You know what? I need to start putting these jokes in Supermemo. Anyway, I I socialize a lot with younger kids now, so they have their different jokes, and mine don't work so well. But we don't put it on YouTube, guys. We don't put it on YouTube. This embarrassing part. Yeah, I will say the same joke next time, or maybe I even put it on general text when I remember.
Yes. Yeah, we should have a collection of those.
Guys, the plan was this. We stay here as long as the last person dies out or goes to sleep. And then Tom
Okay.
is free. And then Tom is free.
All right. Well, any more questions or
Um,
whatever?
I do have one. If you guys don't mind, it's a little less. I feel weird asking some questions because I feel like it's very centralized. I'm not at a part where I'm thinking about kind of the education in or just kind of the world or the society in general. But so there, I think there's a lot of people who are in, especially like my coworkers and colleagues and stuff, who are in either financial or job situations that they have lost their curiosity and or they're just kind of grinding. They've got themselves into like financial situations or with family situations where they've lost a lot of their curiosity and are just kind of going through the motions in order to get a paycheck. This isn't really children focused, and I see them put some of their values, I guess, onto their children forward.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of in a similar situation for now. What would you say to people like that, and what would you recommend people do to, I guess, reverse or change that situation? I think I know at the beginning people need to be aware that it's a detrimental situation, and some people are already so numb they don't see that. But like if people are coming to me and talking to me about stuff, what could I recommend or approaches even that I could take for myself that you would recommend people to kind of take back their lives and improve the lives of their family and then their children subsequently as well?
Yeah, it's really tough because if you have to do a job that you don't like, then of course you come at the end of the day, you're totally exhausted and probably just want to either drink or just do something completely mindless, turn on the television and zone out, So I don't know how you get past that. Quit that job and do something else. I don't know. Maybe you could just figure out some other way. I mean, if people could just pursue things they're really passionate about, then it doesn't become boring or tiring. You can work at it, 20 hours a day and you don't want to quit, right? For something that you're really passionately keen on. But unfortunately, the way the whole system is set up, so many people have to do jobs that they find totally boring. And so it's laborious and exhausting. Oh, I don't know what the solution to that is, to try to find something that you're really keen and interested in and get through that boring day to get on to something that you really want to do, whether it's, building a playhouse or having a garden or reading books or doing something. I don't know.
I would
But
answer
that's it.
differently. I think
Yes.
Tom lived a life of passion, so he may not fully understand the feeling when you have to do something which you don't like and that you just have to because
Oh,
you're
no,
trapped.
I've been there, done that. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because I remembered the story about you teaching for 10 years in LA, and it seemed that and maybe it's kind of how I heard the narrative, so it might be very different. But my impression was your life took a very sharp turn when you moved to Canada to start the free school. That's why I wanted to know, like, I guess, like how you kind of kept your passion, or if maybe that 10 years wasn't that this experience wasn't what I kind of made it out to be.
Well,
It sounded like it wasn't as fulfilling as the rest of your life. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of it was just slogging it out. But I mean, because working with kids can be a lot of fun, right? And that was the good part. I don't know if you read I think Piotr has published this somewhere. My thing I wrote in 1966 about my experience with the so-called slow learners. I mean, and that's in the appendix to the book as well. But what a fantastic experience that was. And it was a lot of it was terribly stressful. For one thing, of course, I was under heavy criticism from the school authorities. Fortunately, the principal was a cool guy who understood that there was something going on here that was actually pretty good. But the others they just didn't know what to make of it, and most of the teachers thought I was being terribly destructive. These kids were being told they could do whatever they wanted, and this was really bad, and that sort of thing. But and that's when I realized, I have to get out of this because if I don't, I'm going to be fired anyway. There, there was one time, this was with a grade 7 class, and the kids were good at making paper darts and throwing them when my back was turned, and I would pick them up and say, you only know how to make one kind of thing. So I found a book on making paper airplanes, and so I was teaching them how to make all these different kinds of paper airplanes. We were having a wonderful time, and they were sailing them all over the room. And I was down on the floor picking things up, and all of a sudden the room went dead silent. And uh-oh. So I stood slowly up, and the vice principal, who was a very severe woman, was standing in the doorway, and she said, "Mr. Durrie, I wouldn't have thought there was a teacher in this room." In other words, the kids were having way too much fun. So I was thinking, oh my God, my days as a teacher are numbered. There's no question about that. Well, where were we?
I still itch to provide the answer to Norman. So,
But
if we meet people who are unhappy in their jobs, of course we can advise changing the job. But usually those people are already damaged. In other words, the fact that they are unhappy in their own job deprives them of the strength and power to change jobs. So I would start from not sending kids to school, because according to Tom Durrie's formula, you send kids to school, you deprive them of the tools which help them navigate through the world and find what they love. But there is something which is a little bit unusual about my prescription. You can incrementally start loving things. So if you are really trapped, you may start looking for anything that is fun in your job. You can, it's like, learning something from the seed, gradually add little leaves of passion, and perhaps even the worst profession can become fun. I remember doing lots of jobs as practical training, and somehow I always found something to turn them into great passions. So the thing is that I was always free, so it was easy for me to get a nasty job and then turn into some fantastic fun. And one of the best examples is a lady from Finland who's got a passion for cleaning. She loves the dirtier the house, the dirtier the toilet. She loves it more, and she turned it into fantastic business. People pay her lots of money to clean the dirtiest things, and she's very picky. Not dirty enough, I'm not taking it. Then she makes a YouTube installment. She turned cleaning into passion. Anything can be fun as long as you have the tools. As long as you are not deprived of those tools in the school system.
Yeah.
Or family home sometimes.
Yes, I agree with you. It's like the free school kids who ended up in public school, finding it fascinating just to observe how all the other kids behaved, because it seemed so ridiculous to them. So, I mean, they found that was an outlet. The actual schoolwork was totally simple, but they just observing the behavior of other kids and of teachers and so on was interesting to them. So, yeah, they found something interesting there.
Actually, I have anecdote over it. Recently, I've read just that kids from one of the free democratic school, they learn how the school was back like 100 years ago, with all the physical punishments that were going on, and they actually like to play with the schools and just, okay, so beat me right now. Yell on me. I don't have my homework. Yell on me.
Yes, that's right. Make me wear a dunce cap. Yeah. Well, it's not that much different these days. Where teachers are not allowed to punish kids physically. And they still are, and there are many places where children are still, or grown-ups are still allowed to brutalize children, but it's against the law in schools. But they have other ways of humiliating and exercising control. I mean, they have to exercise control. That's the major thing. So you got to, if you can't do it by threatening physical punishment, you can do it in other ways.
Yeah, and actually, I think it's even worse because if you change the physical punishment to the psychological one, it can be really nasty.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yes. I sometimes think, like maybe the very strict kind of school is better than the easygoing one. At least you know where you stand. If your school is really strict and you got to sit up straight and you have to do what you're told and everything, at least, yeah, okay, you can understand that. But as you say, the psychological manipulation is far worse. If you're in a strictly disciplined situation, you can become rebellious.
Yep.
Whereas if you believe that what's really being done is so good for you and you must love it, well, then yeah, the psychological manipulation is far worse.
I'm trying to get a big picture of what we need most from this conversation, and I think I have a very, very difficult but important question for you. We see 160 years of a wrong system torturing children. And most of smart people say, let's do hard organic work. Let's change it locally. Let's teachers work better. Let schools improve their statutes. Let's statutes. Let's learning methods improve. As I says, we need to change social consciousness, maybe awareness of the problem. We need to write books like you do.
Yeah.
We have been writing books. You read Summerhill 60 years ago. That's 60 years ago.
Yeah.
So in other words, we are treading water. We are all the time hoping that changing the awareness or working hard at the grassroots level can change something. I think we need a radical cut, and the idea of the school strike, not only student strike. This year we want to have something bigger, but it's extremely difficult to put it together. The idea of a radical change through rebellion is something which for me is the only hope. And if you agree, what kind of message would you formulate from the perspective of a 92-year-old who has spent 60 years fighting with this system to wake people up to the fact that we can't continue using the same methods and expect a different result?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that social change happens very slowly. And in many ways, it's happening now for the worse. As I point out in my book, particularly the way people relate to each other socially in commerce, because there isn't that kind of friendly interchange there used to be. Now, I mean, you can go through your entire life without ever speaking to another person. I mean, I can go to a supermarket. I don't have to talk to anybody. I collect my stuff. I can do an automatic checkout. I don't have to talk to another person. And this is very sad. I think we miss just the simple social interchange of saying, how are you today? I'm fine, thank you. Nice to see you again, et cetera, et cetera. In transactional analysis, we talk about strokes, and a stroke is a unit of recognition, and it's so much as little thing as somebody saying hi, hello, and it's what keeps people alive. It's like what Eric Byrne said. It keeps your backbone. It keeps your spine alive, right? It's like a pat on the. It can be like a physical touch for children, and particularly children need to be caressed and held and cuddled and that sort of thing. And in the grown-up world, maybe we don't do the physical thing as much as we should, but even if we do it as socially to speaking to each other. And there's a recognition, yes, I am a fellow human being. I'm here and I'm valuable as a person. Even if it's somebody who's treating me as a customer, at least they're showing me, that's why I go to a small little grocery store in Hope, which is the nearest town to me. Rather, there's a big supermarket that people like because they think they're getting a better deal. I don't think they are anyway, but I go to a smaller store because I walk in and somebody says, "Hello, Tom, how are you today?" And that makes me know, yes, I'm alive. I'm part of this society. I'm recognized as a person. That is disappearing so much in our culture. It's very, very sad. And I don't know what the answer to that is. And a part of it is computer technology. So people are, social media is not the same at all as personal contact. It's interesting, yes, and we communicate all kinds of silly things, but it's not the same as a face-to-face vocal recognition. So I don't know what's going to happen in that regard, whether there'll be some sort of revitalization, restimulation, but whatever.
You say beautiful things. Therefore, it may sound picky when I say there is one thing I disagree with, but I think that point of disagreement is extremely important.
Yeah,
because you started from saying social change is very slow.
It is. Yeah.
And now I'll pick something which Danny Greenberg used to say, that if you look at 1989, the collapse of communism, then you change the rules in which the society operates, and suddenly the adaptation is dramatically fast. And in Poland, I lived through it, in a sense that we moved from a helpless communist society to the society of entrepreneurs. And actually, I was one of the first, because in the first or second year of the existence of a capitalist system in Poland, we set up a company. And we are celebrating having a stamp. We have a company and a stamp. For a communist, it was something like, well, we have a stamp here. Bang, this is me, my company. So this was dramatic earthquake. There was a tectonic shift.
Yeah.
And the speed of social change came from different rules of the game. So the whole idea of our school strike and the new law is based on the fact that we set up entirely new rules of behavior, freedom. In other words, we can have the same old school subject to those 4 points: indoctrination, inertia, vested interest, and convenience, but we change just one thing. The kid can walk out from the door after the change. And this immediately induces change in the thinking of the teacher who's losing the kid, in the thinking of the principal who can see kids disappearing from the school and school being financially unviable. In other words, that will be a kind of tectonic shift similar to that what happened in 1989.
I do hope so. Yeah, I hope so.
The interesting thing, Danny Greenberg used to say that in early 1989, nobody would believe you if you told him Soviet Union won't be in existence in 2 years, or the communists will be gone in 1 year.
Yeah,
nobody would believe that.
That's true. Yeah.
So back to my question: can I somehow ask you to reformulate, in perhaps more optimistic or perhaps more urgent way, a message to people who believe that writing book is enough, or being a good teacher is enough, or just being a good parent? I just believe if we keep believing in those things, we will not change the system unless it really collapses on its own through the development of artificial intelligence. However, do you think you can have a message to those who believe in little steps, little improvements, organic work?
Well, yeah.
Something which could spark urgency.
Yeah. Well, I guess revolution is possible, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. As you say, radical shifts in government. Who knows where we're going in that regard? I mean, we have this big, sort of extreme right-wing movement, How big that is, it's very noisy, but how actually influential it is, I don't know. There was a poll done in 2019, I think it was, I read about, whereas 49% of Canadians had a very positive view of socialism, which is interesting because it's surprising that that many people would think socialism is a good idea. And I mean, we've already got socialism, for heaven's sakes. So many things are publicly owned. People don't realize how socialist we actually are. And of course, the word socialism itself, people don't really know what it means, and so they think it's communism or something like that. I don't know. But, who knows? When the next election comes, there could be a radical shift. But I fear it may be in the wrong direction. But I don't know. Again, every little move we make, all you can do is stir the little pond that you're in and hope that those waves will expand and continue. You throw a rock into the ocean and see what happens.
If you speak about the election, Lucas and Vita are still with us. So I would like to emphasize that in Poland this year, we have elections, a parliamentary election, which is going to be pretty strong with lots of interest.
Yeah.
In other words, this could be the best moment to make a big statement, a big rebellion to communicate to politicians that education is really in the doldrums. It's in a tragic state. People are unhappy across the board, and hope that somebody wants to really make some political capital on the fact that this unhappiness is expressed in a school strike. And then perhaps we may have many pathways to change, but perhaps the simplest pathway is just one powerful politician taking interest in that unhappiness and picking it up for his election campaign. And I'm super curious if Vitor or Lucas would disagree with me.
No, I don't disagree with you at all. I think this is very possible. I don't know, who knows? Sometimes you may get a strong reaction against a school strike. People say, well, kids shouldn't get these kind of ideas and all that. Or there may be more intelligent people will say, yes, okay, this is a good sign that we need to do something different about school, about education, about the whole thing. So, I just keep doing things. That's all I can say.
Majority of teachers, yes.
Sorry, Norman would like to know where your book can be bought.
Yes, well, I am still fighting with the publisher. So as soon as it is available, it will be, of course, on Amazon and any number of other platforms, and I hope also in bookstores. So as soon as it is available, which it should be, God, I hope in a week or less, it will be well publicized. So you'll be able to order it, and it'll also be an ebook too, so you can read it on a tablet or whatever you want. Okay, that's the best I can say about it. I'm pushing for it to get it done. Been dragging on far too long.
I have also follow up.
We're dying waiting.
Hey?
No, never mind. I mean, we're dying waiting. The book coming out. Actually, I have a question. I really want to.
Straven, and what's the time at your place?
It's 6:53 a.m. now. Yes.
Oh boy.
How
do you survive?
It's going on 2:30 here. Almost 3. I think we've talked long enough.
I have a question I really wanted to ask.
Okay, go on.
Because actually, I'm really fascinated about the fact that literacy was way higher back than people actually learning or reading the Bibles. So that means the priests or the preachers are teaching people the New Testament or Bible, right? Teaching them how to read about that. So, but after that, after the school coming out, the literacy is actually going down. So, what can we actually take away from the fact that back then people the literacy is way higher than, I mean, maybe recent years.
Yeah. Well, the fact that people often taught their kids to read from the Bible because they were religion. Everybody was religious at one pretty well, except for a few oddballs. But until Darwin's ideas became widespread, most people believed they believed in creation, right? And the Bible although the Bible wasn't the only book, but I'm talking in terms of the language itself, and that enabled them to read also political tracts and other literature of the time. So because if you were learning to read from the King James Bible, this is not simple, right? This is not written in childish language at all. This is beautiful. It's beautiful language. There's no question about it. If you look at the Bible as a piece of literature, it's fabulous. However, but I don't, to see it as the Word of God is stretching it a bit. He couldn't have been that good of a writer, but we know that it was King James organized this group of writers to do this translation of the Bible, so there would be one standard version that the Church of England could stand behind. Anyway, how you learn to read is probably irrelevant. You will learn to read no matter what books are read to you or whatever. I think that's the most important thing in the world, is reading to children from an early age, and it doesn't make that much difference what you read to them. I guess they will associate spoken language with the printed word. My mother read to us all the time. Yeah.
The problem is the parents can't actually teach their kids because their parents are apparently illiterate.
Well, Straven, can I interrupt for a short second?
Yeah, please do.
Because you inspired an idea which I think is a fantastic idea. Okay, I'm being immodest at this moment. We need memes. We need new memes to spread our ideas about the change in education. And your Tom's words about King's Bible tell me that we need to ask ChatGPT to write a few passages from the Bible which will say, school is a great sin.
Yes.
So we will say, the Bible says school is for sinners. Paul is skeptical. There's only one who I can observe his reaction.
Was not listening.
Genius.
Oh.
But yeah, I don't care about ChatGPT doing stuff. Sorry.
How about Bible telling you cannot go to school? You can't. That's a sin.
A lot of people are now atheists. How can you persuade them that going to school is a sin?
Yeah.
Actually, what I'm saying, it's a meme. We use memes to spread the message, but the main message is the same. We need to change the system, and abrupt change is possible. And we're looking for ways to build faith. So in a sense, this is a biblical task. We need to build faith. When all people at some point believe in the revelation, the revelation of the fact that when they stop going to school on a specific day for a specific while, they can see change and freedom at the end of the tunnel. So what we are fighting with is actually the belief that this can happen. Very biblical task.
Yeah, well, you can always point out that, during the summer when school is closed, or on weekends when kids don't go to school, or on the holidays and so on, the world does not fall apart. Everything seems to be perking along just fine. Everybody finds something to do. And so school just gets in the way of everyday life and learning. So, when the kids aren't in school, if things are just fine, right? There's no problem with summertime and all that.
Because of the 2-hour mark, I'm obliged, Tom, to ask you if we are not stretching and perhaps we should move the conversation to the next time?
Yes.
Excellent.
I'm all for that.
I still plan to invite fantastic, great people. I hope to get Peter Hartkamp in one of our discussions. From Poland, there is one guy, Łukasz Strokowski, who is a great skeptic of all our efforts. However, it's an incredible brain. So we have lots of dreams about meeting fantastic people. And Tom, there we have a problem with the timing. Anyway, Poland is okay with later hours. So and so is Europe in general.
Sure.
Okay, Tom, fantastic. Listen, I try not to disappoint you. Cut out the boring points and have it on YouTube. Hopefully, it will also promote good ideas plus your book. So let's live in synergy. Let's promote your book, our meeting, and reform in Poland and the rest of the world.
Yes, I hope so. Hope everybody buys a copy of it when the time comes, and I certainly it will be well promoted on social media and elsewhere. Mm-hmm.
I think you can use the meme of your age.
That's a great sell. I think that's a selling point.
Yes. I think for me it was extremely interesting factor. So yeah, the book was a fantastic pleasure to read.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody, thank you for your participation. We have a recording. That's good news. So we can always review it and come back to the best points in the future.
Well, thank for everybody too. Thank you for listening.
Yeah,
putting up with me. Okay.
I love you all. Bye bye.
Okay. Bye bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. So long.
Good night. 6
Bye-bye.
a.m. Straven, crazy.
It's 7 a.m. now. I'm
7.
fine. I'm
Oh
fine.
boy.
Fine.
Good night.
Time for breakfast.
Good
Yeah.
night. Okay, Tom. So we stay in touch by email, yeah?
By all means.
Okay.
Okay.
So
yeah.
I'm tuning out too.
Yeah.
I love you. Bye.
Yeah. Bye now.